All right. Well, it is live, but there's nobody here right now. Well, no, we got 5 people in here. We got 5 people. I was a little bit late getting the notice out. I completely forgot. I got the camera all set up. I'm good about half an hour beforehand, setting up the broadcast, getting it ready, so I can just go live right at. But I was late getting it up there that time, so we got a few people here already. Let me get disclaimers out of the way. We'll jump into it. Hopefully, we'll have some chat coming in that we can respond to. This is the weekly live broadcast. This pretty much every Thursday evening. Sometimes I can't make it, but most of the time I do. On Thursday evenings at 7 o'clock Central. If you have questions you wanted to get answered and I haven't responded to you in chat or something like that, this is the place to do that. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I do not have a topic planned out. I just let the chat during the broadcast itself kind of drive the way that we go. We'll talk about politics, religion, quail, gardening, rabbits, whatever you want to talk about. The only things I ask is be polite, keep it family friendly, don't start cussing anybody, don't hate anybody or hate on anybody, don't be rude. We can have differences of opinions, and that's fine. Still like each other. We can differ on politics or anything for that matter, and still be polite and still like each other and still be friends. So let's jump into it. We got Chester Hickman here, says good evening from Texas. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Vertus here says we didn't think you would be on, Chris. Glad to see you. Yeah, I completely forgot. I was getting ready to come in here and shoot live, and I thought, oh crap, I forgot to set it up. So I had to come in and do that just a minute or two beforehand. Anyway, we got it. George Kaiser says, morning, everyone. Well, evening here, but good morning to you, I suppose. Matt Connell, I don't know if it's Connell. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but anyway, Matt says, hey, Chris, I've been raising quail over a year now with success. This past round, I had 10 hatch the first day. I moved them over, and my heat lamp died. 7 dead overnight. Any way to deal with that? Oh, man, that's tough. Yeah, the heat lamp dying. I mean, I don't know if there's any good way to do it. I have, on my brooder out in the shop, or out in the shed, I have 2 heat lamps on it, and one of them actually went out, but the other one was still functioning, so that worked pretty well. But I have a temperature controller on there too. So if you don't have that and you're trying to run 2 heat lamps, I don't know what your brooder looks like. If you could set 2 heat lamps on it, the Inkbird Wi-Fi temperature controller that I use, it's in my Amazon shop. You can go check it out if you want to. You can set it to where it'll sound an alarm if it gets too cool. So if you have your brooder like in the house or something like that, it would and the heat lamp fails and it starts to cool down to a certain point, it'd start beeping and sending out an alarm. It might notify you that way. If it's connected to Wi-Fi, it can also connect to your phone and send you an alarm through the phone. So that might be something that you could look at. Other than that, I mean, it's just bad luck, unfortunately. I'm sorry that happened. That sucks, but it's part of raising animals. Sometimes you're going to have some kinds of issues like that. Andy Dundas, I think it is, says, hey, Chris and everyone from Michigan. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Matt says, any tool to notify if that happens? Okay, well, I think I probably got that addressed already. But if not, I mean, let me know. I don't know of any other way to notify you. I mean, I don't know if there's probably thermometers that have alarms on them too. I really don't know. Where we at? Homestead Matters says, howdy, folks from Eugene, Oregon. Hope everyone is doing well. Well, I'm doing well. Hopefully you are too. George says, get a bigger heat lamp. Well, I don't think the issue was it being a small heat lamp. It's you only had one, and the heat lamp went out. So a bigger one's not really going to do any good there. Cowgirls, Jesus, and Rodeo says, howdy from Oklahoma. Good to see you. I don't know what part of Oklahoma you're in, but you may not be far from me. I'm in Joplin, Missouri, so we're right on the Oklahoma border. Good chance we're neighbors. All right, we got Homestead Matters says, just found an option to offload the extra quail eggs. Local food bank accepts them. Never thought to do that, but checked in after a post on Facebook. Well, that's a great way to do that. I never thought about that either. Yeah, that's a fantastic way to offload some of them. Guadalupe says, hello, Chris. I had a breed last month that moms had 3 fall-offs, but the babies were not born. It's been 7 days now that they were overdue, and they did what? They did life for the male. Any tips on what happens? And they did. I'm having a hard time deciphering this one. I think there's a typo in there, and I can't figure it out. So you had you bred your doe last month. What you're saying, 3 fall-offs, but the babies were not born. It's been 7 days now, and they're overdue. And I don't know. I don't know exactly what you're asking me there. Any tips on why she didn't have any babies? Is that what you're saying? Like she never kindled. It's been 7 days past due, which is probably well to say it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, there's just so many different variables that could go into that. I don't know how hot it's been there. If it's been super hot, your buck may have gone sterile. I would just say try again and see how it goes. I don't know how old these rabbits are. I mean, if it's an older doe, it may just be time to retire her and get a new doe. But, you're looking, when I say an older doe, I'm talking 5-6 years old, something like that. It may be time to go ahead and look at retiring and getting a new one. But it's hard for me to say. I really don't know. There's just too many different things that could go into that. David Lister is here, says howdy from McAllister Quail Trail. We have several hickory trees on our acreage, so lots of hickory nuts or bitter nut. Can our rabbits eat them? I think so, but I don't really know. Let me look that up real quick. Let's see. Well, okay, this is saying I don't know. You're going to have to do some Google research on that. I'm getting like mixed answers. So, I'm thinking it's okay to feed them, but you might do it in small amounts and test it out first. The mixed answers I'm getting when I did a quick Google search were that some of them said, yeah, it's fine to feed them. Some of them said it's fine to feed them, but they're super high in calories, so you want to go low on them, which makes sense because like sunflower seeds are kind of the same way. One of them said they're really hard for rabbits to digest and they should be avoided, but that was kind of like an AI generated content. So I really don't know. I've never thought about feeding hickory nuts to a rabbit, so you're gonna have to do some research on that one. I just don't know. George says it was a Jaws reference. Get a bigger heat lamp. Oh, okay. Now I get it. I get it. I understand. Okay, that's pretty funny actually. Jay says, hey Chris, what advice or thoughts on nail trimming for meat rabbits? Well, I actually don't ever trim my rabbits' nails. It's probably not a bad idea to do it. Hang on just a second. Sorry. It's probably not a bad idea to do it from time to time, especially if you're going to be handling them fairly regularly. As far as thoughts on it, I'm not sure if you're asking like how to go about doing it. I think if I was going to do it, there's a couple of different ways you could. You could get the rabbit out. I'd probably wrap it in a towel or something like that to kind of keep it kind of contained and feeling a little bit more secure when you go about doing it. And then just trim them like you would a dog's nails. Look for the quick and don't trim down below the quick. That would be my suggestion on how to do that. So Guadalupe is saying, oh, he was saying lift and not life. And you're saying it could be still, it's been 75 degrees and only a year old. Talking about the male, the rabbits that didn't have babies. Okay, so it's only been 75 degrees. That's probably not, it could be a sterilization. It could be just a false pregnancy for whatever reason. I'd say just try again. You're going to drive yourself crazy trying to figure out why it didn't happen the first time. Try again, see what it works, see if it works the second time. That's about the only thing I think you can do. Verna's saying, I heard no nuts for rabbits. Yeah, I've never thought of feeding nuts to rabbits. I don't know. S.O. Swanson says, check your tax advice person. Those eggs are donations, thus may be deductible if you have a business. Well, that's a good idea too, I guess. George says, I ended up culling 7 of my quail hatchlings, kept them for a week with really bad splayed legs. They were getting walked all over and weren't eating enough. It was a sad day. Yeah, it's always sad when you have to do that. But honestly, most of the time with splayed legs, it's very hard to get them to correct it. You have to kind of catch it pretty early, put them in like a shot glass or something that's going to kind of force their legs underneath them. leave them there for quite a while until, hopefully it works. But I mean, at best a 50-50 chance, probably even less than that, honestly. I typically, if I have birds that are hatch out with splayed legs, I typically go ahead and call them, because it just, otherwise they just seem to suffer until, until the inevitable happens. Guadalupe says, I did a rare breed for one of them yesterday and one for today. A rebreed, not a rare breed. A rebreed for one of them yesterday and one today. So you had 2 rabbits that didn't have the babies. Well, I mean, that's starting to sound like, if it's the same buck, starting to sound like maybe you went sterile. Try again. If it's only been 75, I mean, sterilization, when a buck goes sterile from heat, it's not a permanent thing. They'll recover from that. So go ahead and just try again. Let's see. Verna says their stomachs are made for grasses. Nuts may have too much fat in them. Yeah, they may. George says, first time I had a splayed leg problem. Next time I won't wait over a week. I'll dispatch them in the first 24 hours. You're right. They suffer until the inevitable happens. Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the way it goes. If you're having a lot of issues with splayed legs, and it's I mean, there's a couple of things that could cause that. One, if you have like a really slick, floor to your incubator, like don't lay down like newspaper, for example, because they can't get traction on it. And a lot of times that'll cause the splayed legs. Or late hatches, a lot of the times. Birds that hatch out later than the rest of them, a lot of times hatch out with splayed legs. So if you're having a lot of issues with it, make sure you don't have a slick floor, have something that they can get traction on. That'll help. Also, if it is the late hatches like that, then check your incubator temperature and make sure it's not, maybe just running a degree too low or something like that. Sometimes that can kind of cause those issues. Verna wants to know, for Guadalupe, how cool are your nights? Chester Hickman says, if I breed a New Zealand doe to a California buck, will the mating mess up the doe as far as future litters, or just the litter born at the time, or future litters in the future if bred back true? Okay. Okay. So no, it shouldn't affect any future litters. If you're breeding them, I mean, if it's just that one litter that's the crossbred litter, it's not really going to affect your other litters. I think that was kind of the gist of the question. Enzy Rabbit Riot says, thanks for answering questions. That's cool, man. I'm just getting started with rabbit. I have 2 bucks and 9 does. I hope I didn't take it too far. 2 bucks and 9 does. That's a lot of rabbits. But yeah, it depends. I mean, are you set up to be able to handle all those babies? Because you talk about 9 does. If you breed them all at the same time and they all have decent sized litters, you're looking at almost, like 90 some odd baby rabbits. Really, well, probably more like 85 baby rabbits to be able to take care of. That's a lot of rabbits, but hey, if you can handle it, you can handle it. Guadalupe says 65 at night. Yeah, that sounds like about right temperatures. Like I said, just try again. See how they do this time. It seems like you already did try again, so hopefully you have better luck. So, okay, this is talking about eating the hard-boiled quail eggs. Homestead Matters says tried soy ginger garlic marinade for the eggs and have a new addiction, but quail math hit hard just as my chicken started laying. Chester says, thank you, Chris. Well, you're absolutely welcome. And Verna's saying, try again, try rebreeding next week. If they don't lift, they may have taken. Yeah, maybe. It's not that bad. Chester says, I have 10 does and 5 bucks. Yeah, that's quite a few. I just have I have 2 does, 2 bucks. That is what I have right now. I've thought about increasing at times, but I don't know. I don't necessarily need more than that. That works out pretty well for me. I do have, let's see, my doe should be due first or second week of November. I can't remember. I got to look back at the calendar. So 2 weeks from now, roughly, hopefully my silver fox will have her baby. Still waiting on the Tamucks to grow out a little bit more before I breed them. The dough's still a little bit on the small side. Hey, Boris, good to see you. So David Lister says that Living Tradition suggested smoking them, but I have not tried yet. Smoking the hard-boiled eggs. I've had smoked eggs before, and honestly, it wasn't all that great. I mean, it wasn't terrible or anything, but it just seems like a whole lot of work for not much return. But, quail eggs may be a little bit different. I haven't actually had a smoked quail egg, so that may be something to try. Guadalupe says they lifted today and yesterday, so fingers crossed. Yeah, I'm betting you're going to have probably good luck out of these, hopefully, anyway. I'm thinking it's probably going to work. But Jay says, thanks, Chris. Yeah, my thoughts were if they were not handled that often, if trimming them really is necessary, I don't want to risk that they will get injured more, but I never clip my dog or cat nails. So, yeah. Well, I get it. We do clip the dog's nails from time to time, actually quite frequently because they get pretty long. We don't have any carpeting in the rest of the house now. So when he walks, it click, 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 that. And so we do clip them. But yeah, I don't ever really mess with clipping the rabbit nails. I don't think, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to clip it too short. Yeah, that's an injury, but it's not like a life-threatening, prolonged injury. You're not going to do any permanent damage to them. So don't stress about that if that's your concern. But I don't know that you really necessarily have to trim them either, because I never do. I never trim my rabbit nails. Outside Dog says, we have had really good results with splay leg, I think is what it's supposed to say. We bought a pack of things off Amazon, like rubber bands with a wrap on the middle, and you have to tie it to make it tight enough, but they work. Yeah, I've seen those. Like basically you're building a splint for their legs, tying their feet together underneath them like that. So I'm glad to hear that you've had good luck with them. I have not really had good luck with them, but anyway. Verna says you can cook raw eggs in the shell in the smoker. Yeah, you could. It's the same. Basically you're getting it's like a hard-boiled egg, because you're just cooking it in the shell. You're doing it with heat. It's the same thing as hard boiled, or doing it in the oven for that matter. You could do it that way for sure. Jay says, thought it could be sort of the same. What? Oh, yeah. Talking about clipping the nails. Yep. Verna says a young buck may be missing. That could be the case. That's a good question, Guadalupe. Have you had success breeding this buck before? Or is it, you may have an issue with the buck. There's a lot of different things that could happen. But if he's a proven buck, if he's had litters before, then I would say it's probably just a fluke of some kind, and he's probably back on and okay. George says, quail eggs, hard, a hassle to peel. We just eat omelets 3 to 4 times a week to use them up. I do like a good quail egg omelet. Yeah, they're a little bit of a pain to peel. I've heard good things about the egg peelers, the automatic egg peelers. You might look them up if that's something you want. Homestead Matter says, anyone have any tips to convince the better half that we should get into rabbits? Well, I don't know. Does he like rabbit? Has he ever eaten rabbit? I don't know. One thing is rabbits, as far as like feed to meat conversion, are one of the best, if not the best animal for that. I can't remember the exact math, but it's like for every pound of food, they gain this many pounds of body weight. Actually, it's probably in ounces with a rabbit. But anyway, it's way better than cattle. It's way better than any other kind of mammal. They're just fantastic at converting feed to actual weight gain. Let's see where we at here. Carolina Kind Family Homestead says chat. I don't know if there's more to it than that. And then we got some people talking to each other, which I'll let you guys do that. That's fine with me. Oh, there she is. There's Carolina again. Says, I guess it's she. I don't know. Carolina Kind Family Homestead says, been a long time since I've been at your live. Well, thanks for joining us again. I appreciate that. David Lister saying to George that there are electronic quail egg peelers online. It makes life with quail a lot easier. I've never tried one, but I've heard that they work really well. Um, Guadalupe says, yes, I have. Yes, you have. Oh, had success with that buck. Okay, so if that's the case, then it's probably, I mean, just you're try it again, see how it goes. That's the only advice I can give you, really. Let's see. George says, we just use quail scissors, cut 40 eggs in one go. I'll look into it. Carolina family, I'm just going to call you Carolina. Carolina says, soy sauce and hot sauce on my boiled eggs. Yum. Yeah, I've never done that before. I should try that, huh? So Swanson says, love, love, love my electric egg peeler. I may have to invest in one of those at some point. Guadalupe says it was the rabbits that are a year old that it was a first time breeding. Okay, the females were their first time breeding. Well, it could have been the females too then. I mean, it could be a year old's not, I mean, they should be right at, I mean, plenty good enough to go, but who knows? If you don't produce from them again this time, I don't know where to point the finger necessarily, but I would look at maybe looking at trying to get some new rabbits, at least another doe, so you can test out the male. Scrap 5000 says, oh man, I finally made it. I missed the last 2 weeks. I was having withdrawal. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I wasn't on last week. I was in Chicago for a work trip. So I wasn't on last week. You didn't miss. Well, I mean, I guess you missed, but I wasn't here anyway. So, but we're glad you're back. Andy Rabbit says, let me get home and I'll give you a list of why to get rabbits. Probably got a good one. Carolina says, I need rabbits myself. I called all mine when I moved. Oh, no, that's terrible. Carolina kind is Willie, a male. Okay. I didn't know. I just guessed. I kind of figured that I was probably wrong, but I didn't know. I'm just guessing. Can't see you guys or anything. Just, see a username. That's it. Scrap 5000 says, what's up, y'all? Greetings from New York City. Smash the like button. Well, thank you very much. Look at that. We got 39 people in here and 22 likes so far. At least you didn't miss 2 of them, Scrap. Nope, just the one. All right. Carolina says, yes, very Carolina, as in North Carolina. LOL. I'm friends with you on Facebook, Chris. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not very good on my social media most of the time. Scrap 5000 says, and I too love my electric egg peeler. Berna says he's in the Carolinas. Well, I kind of figured that. I just, I didn't know for sure. Caesar says, thanks, George. Hello, my wife came up with the design. I don't know what we're talking about there, but you guys are talking to each other, so I'll let you. Blessed with Pets says, I'm watching my 3 youngest siblings for the whole week while my parents and 2 of my other siblings are in California. Safe to say I've got my hands full with a 3-year-old, 1-year-old, and 10-month-old. Holy cow, that's a lot to take care of. Well, hopefully things are going okay. Scrap 5000 says, New York has been having such awesome weather. It's like a gift from God, being able to clean up my yard. David says, bye, Max. Did he leave? You saw him in the background, probably. Blessed with Pets says, of illegal because I'm 16 and the 10-month-old is still a foster, LOL. Of illegal, huh? It is illegal for you to do this? Oh, kind of illegal. Is it illegal? I don't know. Well, if it is, I don't think I'd be broadcasting that for the world to see. But, as long as you're taking care of them and doing a good job, I don't know that there's any issue. Andy says, love my electric egg peeler. It's a game changer. D-Bales, I'm sure you have answered this before, but for a first-timer, which is easier to care for and process, rabbits or quail? Quail are definitely easier to process. As far as easier to care for, I mean, there's some trade-off there. The thing with rabbits is that they will take care of their own babies, so you don't have to brood them. You don't have to do anything. I mean, they take care of them, so it's pretty easy from that standpoint. But quail are definitely easier to process. I mean, I can do quail super fast. Not that rabbits are all that difficult, but you also got to factor in you got to have a whole lot more quail to equal even the meat amount, the meat that you get off of one rabbit. But so I don't know if I can answer that one for you. I think they're both pretty easy. I don't think either one of them is terribly difficult. I'm not sure. I don't know. Let's hear from some other people. Like, what do you think? Is quail easier or rabbit easier? I'd say there's probably a kind of, I mean, there's benefits and negatives to both of them in a sense, but I'd say they're about the same. Carolina says, I need one and a feed pellet machine. Yeah, I've thought about that too. Blessed with Pets says, oh, y'all don't snitch on me. I'm not telling anybody, but I don't think I'd broadcast that out for the world to see. Sam says, what are we talking about? What do you, I mean, like right this second? Well, we were talking about, I mean, I don't have a topic. I don't plan a topic out for lives. I do this to interact with you guys and answer your questions and just, talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So the chat kind of drives the way the broadcast goes. We'll talk about, I mean, sometimes we talk politics or religion or whatever. Just the whole point to that is don't hate anybody because they have a different opinion than you. Don't be rude. Don't be hateful or anything like that. Well, other than that, whatever you want to talk about, keep it family friendly. Don't start cussing anybody. Other than that, whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about. I'm open to that. I don't know if that's what you were asking me or not. Scrap 5000 says, Chris, I dumped about 100 gallons of rabbit manure into the one side of my garden, and the tomato plants next to them have gone crazy, and the other rows are half dead. Interesting. Yeah, pretty much my whole garden's pretty much dead right now. We kind of gave up on it. We just didn't have a good year and, excuse me, didn't put a whole lot of effort into it. So gave up and said, well, we'll do better next year. Verna says, quail are easiest to process, but rabbits are easier to care for. I'd say that's probably right. Not that quail are terribly hard to care for, but the fact that you do have to incubate the eggs and brood them, that just makes it a little bit more difficult. Carolina says, it's all good. Call me anything but late for dinner. I appreciate that. George Kaiser says $50 Australian, $35 USD for an egg peeler. Is that a good value? I'd have to eat 40,000 eggs to get my money back. That doesn't sound terribly expensive. That actually sounds a little bit cheap to me. Did you find that on Amazon? Is that an electric one or a manual one? And I don't know that there's an issue with either one. But that doesn't sound terribly expensive. Blessed with Pets says it's fine, though, because I live on family campground and there's always an adult around. Well, there you go. That works out, doesn't it? D. Bale says, thanks for the answer. Well, you're welcome. David says, Chris, have you ever raised or been around larger birds such as emu or ostrich? I mean, I've been around them, a little bit, not much. I don't really know much about them. I've never raised them myself. I did know somebody one time that raised emus, I think it was, and I saw them, but that's about it. I haven't really dealt with them. George says, let's see, do rabbits take up much space? I've got 2 spare 2x4 cages. Is that enough room to get a few? 2x4 is probably, that's enough room. Most of my rabbit cages are 30 inches by 36 inches. You want to make sure they're plenty tall enough. I think I want to say 24 inches tall, but it may be a little bit shorter. You want it tall enough in there where the rabbit can stand up completely on their hind legs. So they don't take up a ton of space. I've got 4 rabbits, and it's a, 30-foot long cage. Maybe it's not quite that long. I want to say it's basically 36 inches times 4. So whatever that comes out to, I can't do the math in my head right now. Scrap 5000 says to George, time is money plus the work and effort involved. JCG says, on average, when do you move quail outside from the brooder? As soon as I can. Usually 2 weeks, roughly. I move them outside. I did a whole video Monday and kind of talked about that. It was released on Monday, so you can kind of go watch that and see. It depends a little bit on the weather outside. If it's super cold, I'll keep them a little bit longer. Maybe 3 weeks at the most, but most of the time by 2 weeks old, once they're feathered out, they're going to the outside hutches. Verna says, George, that is enough room for 1 male and 1 female. Probably, yeah, and don't house them together. You want to house them separately, but yeah, that would be enough room. David says to Verna, yeah, but you can't cuddle quail. Well, you could, but they're not that cuddly, no. George says, found it on eBay, electric. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Let's see. Teresa says, I saw a video today and the lady said that the quail should be kept in a cooler at about 50 degrees Fahrenheit while gathering before putting in the incubator. What do you say about that? Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I mean, they don't have to be. Ideally, you want to store your eggs between about, I would say 45 is getting a little bit on the cool side, but about 45 to about 70 degrees, somewhere in that temperature range. It doesn't have to be exactly 50 degrees, but you don't want it much warmer than about 70, because what happens then is the eggs start to develop before you stick them in the incubator, and then the temperature is not quite right, so it can cause them to basically start to develop and then die and then never develop fully, if that makes sense. So the way I do it when I collect eggs for incubating is I stick them in a cooler. I put them in an egg carton. I just use a regular chicken, a dozen egg carton for chicken eggs. I have a small cooler. I set them in there. I'm at an angle. I put a mason jar underneath it so it holds it at an angle like this, basically. Well, I'll turn towards camera. So basically, it's sitting like this in the cooler, and I throw a frozen bottle of water in there. I switch that out every day so it stays fairly cool in there, but not cold. And then I just turn the eggs by just turning the carton around every day, once or twice a day. So it's tilted this way. I turn it around, so basically it's tilting that way, the next time, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's kind of what I do with them. It is best to do it that way, but I mean, you could honestly, as long as your house is not getting too warm, you could probably just set them on the counters if you wanted to. But that just gives them a little bit of extra assurance that they're, you don't have one that starts to develop and then dies. How are we doing on time? It seems like I'm going through my soda too quick. I better slow down. We got 30 minutes left, almost. Blessed with Pets says, George, that's that'd be perfect for one male and one female. It's best that every rabbit has their own cage. I would agree. Andy Rabbit says, the first time you peel 70 plus eggs, an electric peeler pays for itself. Yeah, I bet. Verna says, Teresa, I never did. I left them in the quail room until I gathered enough to incubate. So, well, yeah, and you could do it a couple of different ways. It just kind of depends. You'll find a lot of the times people will tell you, especially, I don't know who this was you saw in the video, but especially like people that are fairly new to raising quail, they'll see these instructions. I don't know what it is. You see this with just about everything. Is somebody gets online to teach and they'll give you hard absolutes that you have to. Most things aren't that hard absolute. So again, you don't have to worry about it being exactly 50 degrees. You just don't want it to be too warm. It really depends too on how long you plan on storing them. I usually collect eggs for about a week, like 6 days or so, before I go ahead and incubate them. So that makes a little bit of a difference. I'm not letting them sit out on the counter for 6 days and possibly getting warm and starting to develop. Loitering Droid says, I have llama, big llama. Okay. Nice, I guess. Hey, there's War Child. Good to see you. Sam says, let's see. Sam Swinton says, with both meats being lean, which, in your opinion, is easiest to work with while you cook it? Probably the quail. It's just because it's just easier to debone them. I have not figured out. I'm not very good at deboning a rabbit. But then again, I don't know, honestly, rabbit's definitely bigger pieces. I don't know that one's really that much easier than the other. It's 6 1, half dozen the other. They're about the same. So Swanson says, typically $35 for a manual, $75 for an electric egg peeler. So yeah, it sounds like your prices were pretty good, the one you found on eBay. Teresa says 36 inch times 4 is 12 feet. There you go. Yeah, I knew it wasn't anywhere near 30 feet. I said that and then thought, wait a minute, it's nowhere near that. George says, what do I do with the babies, though? Asking Blessed with Pets, and Verna says, I don't have extra cages for them. Do they fight a lot? No, actually, depends on what kind of rabbit you have. If you get some good, like New Zealand's or Californias or something like that grow out pretty quick, just leave them with the mom until it's time to process them. You don't need to separate them out necessarily. I try to separate my rabbits if they're going to go, like if they're like 12 weeks roughly. I try to have them, the males and the females, separated. You can house them all together. I just try to separate the males and the females into their own cages, not individual cages, but into like a cage of males, a cage of females by 12 weeks, because the males will start to try to mount and mate with the females at that point. But you know, if you're getting them to 5 pounds or 4 pounds, or, you know, processing size by 8 weeks, which you can do if you have good quality New Zealand's or Californians. There's a couple other breeds that would fall into that too. I mean, if they're hitting it by 8 weeks, just leave them with the mom and then process them at that point. I've done that plenty of times. It works great. All right. Let's see. Verna says the babies can stay with the doe until they're weaned and then build a grow out cage. Yeah, and you're usually weaning them at 6 weeks anyway. So if they're, I mean, like I said, if they're getting up to processing weight by 8 weeks, you don't even have to remove them from the mom. You can just leave them there the whole time. Blessed with Pets says, I've done 20 breedings in the past month, and it looks like none of them have took. It's super frustrating. Man, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's frustrating. I wish I had good advice for you, but I don't know that I do. JCG says, thanks. I will. Wait. I will. Oh, wait. Thanks. I will. I have been watching your videos for years. Actually found you watching about you talking about processing rabbits. Stayed because you got me interested in quail. And finally, I'm jumping in. Well, awesome. Hopefully things go well. George says, sounds like hard work, Vernon. My wife will kill me if I start building extra cages. And S.O. Swanson says, don't tell her till it's done. Better to ask forgiveness than permission, right? Blessed with Pets says, George, babies can stay with the mom until 6 to 10 weeks old. Then they'll need to be separated, males and females. But if you are selling as babies, you don't have to worry about the extra cage otherwise. Well, yeah, if you're selling or processing, you don't really need them. It's always good to have some extra cages around, though. I mean, just for whatever reason. But if you don't have them, it's okay. You can get away without it. Teresa says, so then you should order eggs in the summertime. I'm not sure what the so then is in reference to necessarily, but I mean, there's no problem ordering eggs in the summertime. You know, I know it's kind of, when you order eggs, you're always going to get just a little bit of a lower hatch rate from shipped eggs anyway. I mean, that's just the way it goes, even if they're all fertile. Usually, not always, but usually you get just a little bit of a lower hatch rate. With that being said, I mean, I still usually get, you know, 60%, maybe 70% at times with shipped eggs. But the summertime doesn't really seem to affect it too much. I've had eggs shipped in the summer and had good results, and, you know, eggs shipped in the wintertime and had good results. It doesn't seem to matter really. Not here. Now, I mean, if you live in like the desert, maybe, or, well, I don't even know that the desert, I don't know if that would make any difference. I think you're okay to order pretty much any time. Probably depends on your post office, how well they do at keeping, you know, taking care of things. Caesar says, Chris, one of my quails has a lump on her knee foot. What can cause that? She's fine otherwise. Well, I mean, there's a couple of different things. It could be an infection of some kind. If it doesn't seem to be like infected or swollen, I don't know that I'd worry about it too much. You said knee/foot. It doesn't make it sound like bumblefoot, because bumblefoot's usually the bottom of the foot. So this sounds more like the top area, something like that. If it does look like it's an infection of some kind, if it's like abscessed or something, you probably need to go ahead and, like, you know, lance it and drain it out, get whatever's causing that out of there, treat it, and then, you know, hopefully it gets better. I mean, there's probably an injury of some kind, but I don't know. Dawn says, wow, I made it and almost missed. It's all good. Glad you made it. Teresa says, can't type tonight. Hey, that's okay. I can't type most of the time either. I mean, actually, I'm not a bad typer, but my spelling's terrible. Terrible. I can't spell hardly at all. Thank goodness for spell check, because I'd be really bad. All right, I used to feel bad about that actually, but then I read a study one time that said people with higher intelligence often have a hard time spelling. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I'm going to go with that one. So I don't know. Made me feel a little better. Verna says, Teresa, you can order eggs any time of year. Just be mindful if you will brood them. Yeah, that's good advice. Teresa says, can you try and hatch a young hen's very first eggs? Yeah, actually you can. I mean, I usually give them like about a week and 2 weeks before I collect eggs and start incubating, but you can try to hatch the very first ones if you wanted to. Just the thing is, when they first start laying, you're probably going to get some really weird eggs, like double yolk eggs. Sometimes you'll get an egg with no shell on it, little bitty tiny eggs. Those are not going to hatch, so there's no point in trying to incubate those. But that doesn't necessarily mean that none of their eggs would work. But like I said, I usually give them about 2 weeks, and then I start incubating. And Verna's saying, Teresa, it's better to wait a week or so before you start gathering the young ones' eggs. I think so too. It probably is better. It's probably going to give you a better hatch rate. Don says, S.O. Swanson, yes, I walked the ramp twice today. It was as scary as a Six Flags ride. Oh, no. Hopefully you're doing all right. I forgot about that. Jacob says, I just bought the I don't know how to pronounce that. Vever, I don't know. Electric egg peeler on the last Amazon deal days, and it's worth every penny. I should have looked for that while I didn't even think about that. Guadalupe says, how many rabbits would you recommend to have for breeding? Well, I mean, it kind of depends. How many rabbits do you want? How often do you plan on eating rabbit? You got to kind of figure all those things out. Plan on your rabbits having probably around 8 babies per litter. Takes them roughly 8 weeks to grow out. Verna's saying I would start off with 1 buck and 2 does, and that's a pretty good suggestion because that gives you, you're not starting off too big. It's pretty easy to expand if you want to at that point, but that gives you something that's pretty manageable, pretty easy to deal with, and kind of get the hang of it. Andy Rabbit says, reason for having rabbits, they are quiet. Their poop is the best fertilizer you can get. Maybe not the best, but it's a pretty good one, that's for sure. It has kept my plants alive during the heat of summer without water. They can eat your garden scraps. Well, yeah, those are all good reasons. Cindy says, good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. Dawn says, I was thinking for me 3 does and 1 buck, but would that be a little overkill? Not necessarily. I mean, if you can handle 3 does and the babies that come along with them, then yeah, that's not too many. Andy says in fall cleanup, they take up little space. You can sell the babies. If they don't sell, you can eat them. They grow fast and they taste delicious. You can make blankets or other things from the hides. Not a lot of mess after butchering day. Yeah, those are all pretty good reasons. But honestly, the making things out of the hides, when you're processing them at 8 weeks old, the hides are not top quality hides at that point. They're still a little bit on the thin side. You can definitely do things like that, but don't expect to get like top dollar for the hides because they're really mostly just like craft quality, not necessarily. I mean, you could try to make a blanket out of them, and it might be okay, but it's not the same as an older animal. Let's see. Blessed with Pets says, honestly, you can use extra dog kennels if you're in a pinch. I had a doe in one right now because I'm out of room, and she started fighting with her cage mates. Yeah, well, that's true. Andy says, rabbits don't eat a lot of pellets if you don't go overboard on how many you keep. Nope, that's true as well. They don't eat that much, actually, about, I'd say, 8 ounces of rabbit pellets a day. Andy Rabbit says, rabbit ears, tails, and feet can either be craft or dog treats. Yeah, that's true. Rabbit ears make great dog treats. I just throw them in the oven, leave the oven open down 110, dehydrate them basically is what I'm doing. And then, they make good dog treats. He loves them. Carolina says, I'm real bad at spelling myself. Well, hey, you must be pretty smart. Pretty high IQ then, right? Lander says, nice shirt. Thank you. Yeah, this is one of my favorite ones. Yeah. It's canning season, right? I like it. Let's see. Andy Rabbit says, then there is rabbits can be cute, but they can also be but that can also be a fault too. Yeah, it does make it a little bit tougher to process because rabbits are pretty cute. It does help a little bit whenever you don't handle them a whole lot. So when you get them out to process them, they kick and scratch and, kind of make you a little bit angry. It makes it a little bit easier, but they're still pretty cute. So it does make it a little bit difficult on processing day. David Lister says to Andy Rabbit, how do you process rabbit ears for dog treats? We don't have a freeze dryer. I think I just kind of explained that. Just dehydrate them basically in the oven. Turn it, down to 100 degrees or your lowest setting. I kind of crack the door and throw them in there until they're basically dehydrated, dry, and crispy. That works. But you don't have to do that. You could feed it to them raw, just the way it is. Keep them in the freezer and, feed them that way. We feed chicken feet to my dog that way. Whenever we process chickens, we always keep the feet. We keep them in a freezer bag in the freezer, and several freezer bags actually, and we just get one out every once in a while. Just give it to him frozen, and he loves them. He goes through them like it doesn't take him long to eat one. Don says, if my nails don't get too long, I can type fine. It's the AI changing what I type that ticks me off. Yeah, that's irritating, isn't it? Andy says, I dehydrate the ears. Chris has a video on it. I do. I did a video on that. Oh boy, that's been a long time ago. But there is a video I did on that. Dawn says, I'm afraid I'll get into the cuteness, and I know I will at first, but I did that with Quail too. Then it was leave them alone for food time for me. Yeah, that's a little bit difficult to get over if you're not used to it. And Verna says you can just freeze them and give them to your dog that way. Yep. You can do that for sure. Cindy says, my Rhode Island Reds will be 20 weeks old on November 4th, and I haven't seen an egg yet. Well, if you don't have extra light on them, you're probably not going to see any. Let's see, 20 weeks, that's 5 months. Don't chickens take a little longer than 5 months to start laying? I'm not huge on chickens. I don't have any chickens right now. I thought it was 6 months for chickens before they start laying, but I'm not real sure on that one. I may be wrong. But also the time of year, the days are starting to get pretty short. So unless you have extra light on them, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of egg production out of them. Brenda says, I froze whole quail, and I froze whole quail, and we give them to Lucy, and she loved them. Yep, that would work too. David says to Andy Rabbit, no dehydrator either. I guess we're processing equipment impaired. Not necessarily. You can dehydrate in your oven. I just kind of ran through the process for that, and it works just fine. Yep, Andy's saying the same thing. Teresa says, do you still use your Little Giant? What's your favorite incubator? I don't use it much anymore because I've got that Ovation. It's the Brincy. I think it's pronounced Brincy. I always get that wrong. Ovation 56 Advance, I think. I've got that one I've been using right now, and it's doing pretty good. I still have my Little Giant. I'm looking up at it now. It's on the shelf up there if you're wondering what I'm doing. But I haven't actually used it for probably about, the last 4 or 5 hatches I've done. I haven't actually used it. But it's a great incubator. There's nothing wrong with that at all. My favorite one's the one that works and the one I have, So, I like the Brincy. It's a lot more expensive than the Little Giant. So, if you're looking at getting an incubator, you don't have one right now, you want to save a little bit of money, the Little Giant works great. I've had fantastic hatch results with that forever, and their customer service is fantastic. If you have any problems with it, they will definitely stand behind it, and they will help you out. So you can't go wrong with that. It's a lot cheaper than the Brincy. S.O. Swanson says 20 weeks to start laying for those Rhode Islands is about right. Some will do 16, though 18 to 20 is the average for laying. And then Verna is saying to Spider Revis, there was a message retracted from Spider Revis, but I'm guessing it was about egg laying or something, because Verna's saying, do they have extended light? So I'm guessing you probably got it answered already by me. I don't know. Andy Rabbit says, Rabbit makes good lawnmowers. Yeah, well, I guess they would if you put them in a tractor. David Lister says, somebody nice gave us a GQF. I gave her a little giant to our daughter, but she still uses it. Somebody nice. You won the GQF we gave away for the 100,000 subscriber giveaway, I think, didn't you? Wasn't that you? I'm pretty sure it was. So that's, I mean, I guess you're saying somebody nice. That actually was donated by My Shire Farm. So George Kaiser says, friendly quail can be difficult to process too. The nasty ones are easier to call. Yeah, I agree. Andy Rabbit says, Chris, I agree. I love to play with the babies. Then by 8+ weeks, they ain't so cute anymore. Yep. Teresa says, I find my little giant needs constant adjustment. I didn't have that issue with mine. I've never had that issue with mine. When you say constant adjustment, are you constantly like adjusting the temperature? Is that what you're adjusting on it? Make sure it's not sitting over like an air conditioner vent or right in front of a sunny window or something like that. That may be part of the issue. I don't know. Blessed with Pets says, I can imagine how easy it would be if I just had 3 or 4 rabbits. It would be a breeze, but I have 25 breeders. Yeah, that's a lot to keep track of. George says, hopefully all outdoors, Blessed with Pets. Not sure if rabbits smell, but better outside than inside. I mean, as long as you can keep their, I mean, it's just like quail. As long as you can keep it fairly dry, there's not a whole lot of smell to it. But yeah, outside's best for sure because they produce a lot of mess too. JCG says Rhode Island Reds are 6 months. You want to start feeding them layer feed at 4 and 5 months, and they can lay at 5, but it's early. Andy Rabbit says black soldier flies will eat or break down rabbit poop during the summer for you. Well, that depends on where you're at. I mean, it depends on where you are, I guess, is the proper way to say that. Not everybody has black soldier fly. So it's, I mean, it's not, we do around here. They're great. I love them, but not everybody gets them. So scrap 5,000. Wait. Verna says, George, rabbits don't smell as bad as quail. Well, if you can keep them dry, neither one of them's too bad. But yeah, you get them wet, and the quail is definitely, not the quail themselves, but their droppings. You get that wet, it's way worse. Yeah, I agree. Scrap 5000 says, Trump 2024. Well, I agree with you. I don't know if everybody does. And again, it doesn't matter. We're still friends, even if you don't agree with me on that one. But yeah, I'm definitely a conservative. I'm going to be voting for Trump. But you guys can vote however you want to. I would hope you would vote for Trump, but I'm not going to convince you otherwise, probably. Teresa Wiggins says, I've got my first batch of eggs in my little giant, and I don't think any are going to hatch. It's well into day 18 and nothing. Well, don't give up on them yet. Give them a little bit longer and see how they do. Were you just saying you constantly had to adjust your little giant? So, I mean, I don't mean this to sound rude. Hopefully it doesn't. But if you're constantly adjusting it and you don't get a good hatch rate, maybe you should not adjust it so much. Just get you a good thermometer that like a Govee or something like that will track the temperature over time. And if it's averaging out 99.5 degrees, just leave it alone and let it go. I've had really good luck with mine, but I don't know. Hopefully you get a hatch. Brandon says, does anyone know where to get true Texas A&M hatching eggs? I don't right offhand. Unfortunately, I would caution you against it. Honestly, I don't know if there's a reason you're wanting them just because they're kind of cool or something like that. But I had some, and I don't know if they were true Texas A&Ms or not, but they were all white quail. And they were like the most aggressive quail I've ever had. I mean, they fought all the time. It was terrible. And you can't feather sex them. You have to vent sex them to know which ones are males or females. To me, they're just not a good choice, but that's just me. Blessed with Pets says, LOL, yes, they are outdoors, but I would absolutely love to have them indoors. I dream of a rabbit barn. They don't smell too bad if you use pine pellets and keep up with trays. Yeah, that's the key, is keeping them all cleaned up. Spider Eva says, hello, everyone. Glad to be back after Milton. My quail hutch, Chris's design, held up pretty well. However, egg production is very low. So Milton was the hurricane, wasn't it? I've forgotten. I can't keep track of them. But, hey, I'm glad you're back. Yeah, your egg production's being very low right now. They'll pick back up. I mean, as long as you have lights on them, because days are getting shorter. You got to have 14 hours of light. If you do, give them a week. they'll start picking back up pretty quick. S.O. Swanson says to Brandon, you'll need a time machine to go back to 1970 for true Texas A&Ms. And Andy's saying the same thing. Basically, they don't exist anymore. There's Tony from Toronto. Good to see you. George Kaiser says, quail are a horrible smell, Verna, especially in the cold morning air in the winter. If you can keep it dry, it's really not that bad. Scott says, which model, Brincy? It's the Ovation 56 Advance, I believe. Yeah. Teresa says, constantly adjusting the temp every hour or so. It's not in the sun or near a fan or AC or heater or anything. I mean, if you're having that many issues, and it could, and I don't know, and I'm not saying, again, don't take this the wrong way. I don't know how new you are to hatching, but I know that whenever, I was new to, anytime you're new to doing something, you kind of nerd out on it. You really kind of focus on it too much. You are going to see fluctuations in temperature. No matter what incubator you have, it's going to fluctuate a little bit. If you're constantly adjusting the temperature every hour or so, I mean, if it's drastic drops, then yeah, I would contact the manufacturer. They have great customer service. But if you're talking about it's going from like 99.5 down to 99, down maybe even 98.9, and then you're adjusting the temperature, and then it's going back up, and it's getting a little warm, like 99.9, and you're adjusting it back down. That's probably causing more harm than good. Just set it at 99.5, verify that it's actually reading pretty accurate, and let it go and see how that does. Because you can, I mean, if you're watching it. Oh, and S.O. Swanson says, clean your fan and heater. That'll help. Use compressed air to clean it out. That could be. Verna says many have whites, but not Texas A&M. Andy Rabbit says, I ordered some black soldier fly larvae a little early this year to get a head start on them this year. I didn't know where you can order them from, but that's a great idea. Unemployable says, is there any way to make quail nicer? I got a new batch hatched from eBay eggs, and they're an angry bunch. If you can take the lights down, you put them into non-laying, non-mating mode, they'll get a little bit more docile, but they're probably just going to be that aggressive again whenever the lights pick back up and they start laying and start breeding again. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of that is genetic, so I don't know if there's a way to fix that I know of. And I mean, you could try to handle them a whole lot and see if that helps, or give them some time. Sometimes they'll just grow out of that. Sometimes it's like just when they first start coming of age, they get a little bit aggressive. It's probably just hormones, they're like teenagers basically at that point, and then they calm down after a while. S.O. Swanson says, order black soldier fly. What is that? Haha, I get them naturally. Just lucky. I get them too. But not all the time, not a whole bunch of them. But yeah, most of the time I get black soldier flies in the spring. We're right at 8 o'clock, so I got to wrap this one up. But Caesar says Trump all the way. I agree. Matt, let's get one or two more of these answered, and then I'll wrap this up. Matt says, do you keep the automatic water cups in the winter, or do you swap over to something different for freezing temps? Yeah, when the temps start freezing, I switch over to a heated water. It's in my Amazon shop. You can check it out. It's a 2-gallon, I think it is. Basically, it's a bucket with a base on it that has, you plug it in, and it has a thermostat, and it kicks on when it gets down below like 35 degrees. And it does a good job. It's got little nipple drinkers on the sides of it, basically, but it does great. You got to keep it out of the wind. You can't just put it out there in the open, wide open, but it does pretty good. Unemployable says, I don't think admiring Hitler is a Christian conservative value. Don't believe the hype on that stuff. If he said what they're saying he said, which was even Hitler did some good things, well, that's not necessarily untrue. I mean, nobody likes Hitler. He was a terrible guy, but that doesn't mean he didn't do something that was good or whatever. Don't believe the stuff that they're pitching. And remember, you're not necessarily voting for Trump alone. You're voting for the policies, the people that he'll appoint, those kinds of things. And, maybe it's not, he's a flawed person. He's not, the strongest Christian guy like I would like him to be necessarily. But when you compare that to the values on the other side where they're, well, we shouldn't get into all that. You kind of get it where I'm going with that, right? The other side, the values are definitely much further away from Christian values than this side's. So, I mean, that's where I vote for it, if that makes sense. And again, I don't hate anybody because we have differences of opinions. I'm just saying, realize that the media is biased, that they've been leaning left for a very long, long time. The stories that they give you are pretty, and sometimes fake completely, and sometimes just kind of embellished. If you watch it and watch how they talk about Trump versus the other side, I mean, you can tell that they are definitely for the other side, and they're pushing one agenda over the other. And, you know, the other side, I mean, it holds true on the same thing. If you watch Fox News, they're definitely biased for conservatives. I happen to agree with a lot of what they're talking about, but it's definitely a bias there too. So don't just take all that for what, you know, he's denied saying it. Now, whether he did say anything like that or not, you know, we're taking it out of context. We're taking it from a person that is disgruntled for some reason. Whether he completely made it up or if he's just kind of embellishing on a story, we don't know. But I'm just going off his actions. I'm going off of what he did when he was president. And, you know, that's where it goes. Anyway, all right, guys, I got to wrap this one up. We got a whole bunch of comments coming down here. Scott says Hitler talk is desperation talk. Yeah, I know. It's Scott says, I remember Russian talk before that was all fake news. That's true. They still bring that one up, don't they? Anyway, I'm going to get wrapped up in this and keep going, but I gotta wrap this one up, guys. So thank you very much. And we'll see you guys next week. I think I don't see any reason why I won't be here next week. So until then, God bless. We'll see you guys.